Well, good day, everybody. This is Chris. I hope you're doing well and having fun doing whatever it is you may be doing. So today what I'd like to do is I'd like to give my review of the 2015 Trek Fuel EX7. And this is going to be my final word, so to speak, after approximately 6 months of riding this particular bike. You can reference my early video about 6 months ago. That was actually the day that I bought the bike, and I took it up to Ruidoso, New Mexico, and did about 14 or 15 miles of riding along the Grindstone Lake trails area. And I figured what I'd do today is conclude my review of this bike in the beautiful Doñana Mountains, mountains where I end up riding my bike more often than not, because it's right here in Las Cruces and pretty easy for me to access either before or after work. And the trails here are fairly technical desert single tracks, so lots of loose rock and some drops and some climbs and some descents and just a little bit of all that single track trail riding goodness that we all know and love. Okay, so let me go ahead and start by reviewing the bike itself, or what I'll do is review the frame itself and the major components of the bike. So let's go ahead and begin with the frame and the geometry. So this is the pretty standard Trek Fuel EX geometry. It has a cross-country-esque type of geometry. It's a bit more lax, and it is really, its trail bike roots shine through. And if I had to use one word to define how this bike handles and the kind of way that the overall geometry feels, I would say capable would be the word that I use. It's a capable bike, and it doesn't necessarily excel in any particular environment. It doesn't excel as a cross-country race bike. It's actually fairly heavy to be a race bike. It doesn't excel in enduro or any kind of downhill type of biking, and it doesn't necessarily perfectly excel in trail riding, but what it does is it allows you to taste all the variety of environments that you have available to your standard mountain bike experience. And so it's capable more or less at doing a whole variety of things, but it doesn't necessarily master one area. I would say that it's most capable as an all-around trail bike. This is an aluminum frame. The bike itself this particular version, this is a larger version. This is the 19.5, 19.5 virtual, 18.5 actual. So it's a fairly large frame, mid-range spec, and you're looking at probably, this is a large bike, and like I said, it's a 30-pound trail bike. So it is a fairly heavy bike for what it is. So that's the geometry. The major components of the frame, the front fork. This is the Fox Evolution Series 32 stanchions. It has the climb, trail, descend option that we all know with these particular forks. These are the 32 stanchions, so these are very cross-country trail type of stanchions. It does have a 15 millimeter through axle, and it does have a rebound is built into it as well. I was a little ambivalent at first with the fork, and since the fork has grown on me, what I've done is I've actually run slightly lower pressures. I preload it with slightly lower pressures than what Trek recommends, and because I've actually lost some weight, my initial setup was it was a little stiffer than I really needed for my body weight, and I've since spent some time adjusting this, and I've gotten the pressure down a little lower. The rebound is a little faster than what is recommended for a standard setup, so it rebounds a little faster, the preload's a little less, and then I pretty much ride it in open or the descend option pretty much all the time. I don't really run it in trail, and I don't think I ever, other than maybe some prolonged climbs or something like that, do I actually put it into the climb or the pseudo lockout option. I keep that front fork wide and open, and it is relatively supple in this configuration. It's not the most supple fork. It's very strategic in how it deals out It's 120 millimeters of travel, and it still does feel a bit stiff in comparison with the rear suspension. All right, the rear suspension, and this is actually, I should say, farewell to this type of suspension. 2015 was the last year that you will see the DRCV option. And I've talked about a little bit about what that is, but basically it's an extra air canister. You have your main canister, your secondary air chamber, and about halfway through the travel, there's a valve that opens up and allows these two chambers to communicate, and that produces a very linear feel. I will say that the DRCV option does give the Trek Fuel a very linear feel. It's only 120 millimeters of suspension, so it's not the most robust in terms of some trail bikes, which you 130, 140, even 150 for some trail bikes, but at that point you're moving more into like an all-mountain type of bike, enduro type of bike there. But it's 120 millimeters of suspension, so it doesn't have the highest amount of suspension or the largest amount of suspension, but it's very good. It has a very linear feel. And overall, I would say the back end of this bike just feels excellent. I cannot say enough good about how the rear suspension, and it's also aided by this full float design where the suspension is actually attached. The shock actually floats, quote unquote, between two suspension points. And unlike lots of different types of suspension, the shock itself is not attached to the frame, but rather it is attached to its own link. And so you have this is able to float, and it makes for a highly responsive suspension, and it actually resists pedal input reasonably well. That is when it is in the trail option. I happen to have it in its descend or its open option because I'm actually in some rough sections where I have a lot of bumps, and so I do tend to put it into the descend option, but more or less I run it in its trail option, and it has a really nice, good, supple feel, and you can it's pretty capable in a variety of different situations than just the trail option. I do not really lock it out a whole lot. There have been a couple of prolonged fire road climbs where I've locked it out, but that's that. Very functional, feels very good, very linear, and the back end feels so good that it kind of puts the front end to shame, even though the front end is very capable. That's not what I'm saying. There is a mismatch though in the way the front and the back feels, even though I have warmed to how the front suspension feels. The back suspension works very well. Again, this has the active braking pivot point, allows you to get a handful of brake when you're whipping around corners or braking or what have you. Very responsive back end. The suspension is very responsive even under heavy braking. I cannot say enough good things about the active braking pivot. So as far as the DRCV goes and the ABP goes, it is all thumbs up. The back end of this bike is exquisitely engineered. It feels very good, and it is a highly capable setup. And I should say again, goodbye to the DRCV, the 2016 Trek Fuels, Remedies, etc. no longer have this. Fox has actually developed a new type of shock that has a larger, it's called an EVOL or extra volume chamber, and they are reported to have a very linear feel that is similar to DRCV. That is bad, I think, in some sense, because I just love the feel of the DRCV, but it is good in that, as I understand, some of the higher end technologies, i.e. the reactive technology, has trickled down to the lower end bikes. I'm not sure. I don't think that the 2016 EX7 has reactive. I think it fell from the 9.9 and 9 down to the 8, I think. And then I believe that the 5 and the 7 do not have the reactive. I could be wrong on that for the 2016 models. Okay, so let's go ahead and now just talk about the basic components. The seat, again, was nothing special, and here as I stated earlier, I changed out for a prostate-friendly seat. The real standout component-wise, I would say, are the brakes. These Shimano brakes. These are not the LX, the XT. These are just your standard Shimano hydraulic disc brakes. These are incredible. They function very well. 160 millimeter rotor in the front and back. I do not have enough good to say about these brakes. I have ridden this bike for almost 900 miles in 6 months. Maybe a little over 900 miles. I actually have to go back into my ride files and take a look in under 6 months. And I just as of a couple days ago actually had to change the brake pads. That is how much use I've gotten out of these brakes. You know, over not basically 900 miles, doing pretty heavy riding several days a week. I'm averaging 50 to 60 miles a week. I do a 20 or 30 mile ride pretty consistently every weekend, and 8 to 10 mile rides pretty much every day of the week, you know, Monday through Thursday, Tuesday through Friday kind of thing. So very heavy, consistent use on these brakes. Cannot say enough good things about the brakes. The tires were the Bontrager's. I actually, this was a weak point, I think. I actually blew through the tread on the stock tires that came with this bike after about a month and ended up having to change out. What I'm currently running the WTB Werewolf 2.3, and these of course are 29-inch rims. I understand that there's some people that don't particularly like WTB tires, but I must say in this particular environment, the environment that I ride in more consistently, the Werewolves are exceptionally good performers. These perform very good in this loose, sandy stuff that you have to contend with down here in the desert. I'm not sure that these particular tires would be very good performing tires in, say, very muddy environments or very wet or slick environments, such as, you know, maybe the Pacific Northwest. But in this particular environment, they excel. They are incredibly good tires. They are not particularly fast rolling. They roll very slowly, but they're very good at going over obstacles when you get them moving. And they are a little on the heavy side. But again, the general theme of this bike is not a light race, not a light cross-country racing platform by any means. Okay, moving on to the front derailleur. This is a 2x10 suspension. The front derailleur is a, see here, I believe it's a Shimano Dior or a SRAM. I believe it's the Shimano Dior here. No, it's a SRAM X5, excuse me. The SRAM X5 front derailleur. This is a SRAM crank. I believe bottom bracket, press fit bottom bracket. No complaints, the front derailleur. I don't really use it a whole lot. I pretty much keep it in that lower gear, and that's where I do most of my riding. I do have a minor complaint when it comes to the bottom bracket, and I believe that that's just press fit bottom brackets in general. I know that they've kind of gone away from the old screw-in fit, and press fit's the newest, latest, greatest technology. I will say, just from personal experience, that you can get a lot of creaking and noise coming from from a press fit bottom bracket when you get a little bit of grime in there, and you know, it is what it is. So I don't know that it's necessarily as robust as a nice screw-in type of bottom bracket. So I will say, just from a personal standpoint, I'm not the greatest fan of press fit bottom brackets, but I haven't had any significant failures with it or any big problems there. And then finally, that brings me to the chain and the rear derailleur. The rear derailleur is a Shimano SLX. It does have a clutch built into it, so it keeps the chain nice and tight. It's a very quiet, very nice system, and that's aided by the built-in padding that comes standard with the bikes, in addition to a rock guard on the down tube on the front as well. Very nice additions from Trek. The chain, I do have a complaint about the chain. The stock chain broke within the first month that I rode this. I do a lot of riding again, and I do a lot of climbing, but I don't think that the kind of conditions that I typically ride in, and the kind of riding that I do, that I'm primarily trail cross-country riding, and I don't do really heavy trials, downhill type of stuff on this at all. And I'm not, doing really interesting or aggressive maneuvering techniques when it comes to using this bike. I would not expect to pop a chain. And the stock chain did not break on the quick link. It actually broke on a regular area of the chain, a standard link where you'd expect it to be very strong and robust. Now that may just be a one-off deal. I may have just gotten a bad chain, or just, a little weakened area, who knows. That's just my experience, but be that as it may, I don't think that chains should be popping, a month into having a bike. I ended up paying a little extra. I've got a really nice, robust chain, and I haven't had any issues since I replaced the chain. And finally, that brings me to the rear derailleur, and this is probably my biggest complaint when it comes to this particular bike. And again, this may just be my personal experience in this particular derailleur, but what I found with the Shimano SLX derailleur is, if you get any bit of grime in there at all, okay, if I ride this for more than a day or two without robustly cleaning my drive chain out, the derailleur does not function very well. It begins to start skipping around a little bit. Nothing bad, but it will skip around. The chain will pop around a little bit, and maybe that's part of the broken chain. That might be. But if I get any bit of grime in there, it'll start popping around a little bit. And I don't think that even that's a mid-end derailleur. I don't think that a mid-end derailleur and a $2,500 bike should be so fastidious as to start failing after just a little bit of normal trail grime gets into the drivetrain after 3, 4, 5 hours of riding. I just don't think that's particularly robust. So I really do find myself having to fastidiously keep that the drive chain very clean, or I'll start getting a little popping around. That rear derailleur is just very squirrely, very fastidious, and that would be my biggest complaint when it comes to this bike. So to conclude my review, I would say overall, again, this bike is very capable. It excels more often than not as a general trail bike, general trail / cross-country riding. You are probably not going to find this to be a very good race platform. It is pretty heavy, of course. However, I did race this bike, and you can see that video up there. I raced the Horny Toad Hustle here in the Doñanas, and I did the 12-mile option, and I actually came in fourth. I did a 4th place finish with this big old heavy bike. So it is capable of racing. I would say that you really have to ride it a lot, and I'm about 178 pounds or so. So I have a fair amount of weight, and so I've got a lot of muscle on my legs, and I can really power this bike, and I ride a lot. But if I was, say, a light 140, 130 pound guy who was really exceptionally lean and maybe didn't have a lot of muscle mass, I think racing a bike like this would be pretty difficult. I certainly wouldn't be very competitive, and I'm not particularly competitive as it is, but I think a 4th place finish in my age group, which was the middle-aged group, is pretty good. I would say though that interestingly enough, the time that I got, I think it was about 58 minutes for that race. My finish time was actually faster than every single person in the 20-year-old to 30-year-old age group. So if I was 20 years old, I would have actually finished 1st place. So that's something to think about there. But again, I wasn't racing the super competitive, I was racing the category 3, so that's not like the most competitive group of people as well, so you have to keep that into consideration. Okay, so I've been blathering on for a while, but that's my overall review of the bike. I would give it a thumbs up, and I would say that overall it's very capable. However, I am a little disappointed when it comes to particularly when it comes to the performance of the rear derailleur. That really is, I think, the weakest link on this particular bike, and that may just be an isolated issue, and that those derailleurs in general are very good. But be that as it may, I have to be honest with my assessment, and that is my assessment, and that is my comprehensive review of the Trek Fuel EX7 2015 version.